course, this is also useless if the attacker already has arbitrary code execution. So if you're trying to protect a browser sandbox with this, it's useless because you're assuming the attacker already has arbitrary code execution in your sandbox. Same thing for OpenSSH or VSFTPD privilege separated sandbox. So what could we really do that would be useful to do proper sandboxing and attack surface reduction for the kernel? Ideally, a process could opt out from some kernel features it does not require. On Linux, there is nothing really that allows you to drop privileges in a discretionary way. And all the focus is on mandatory access control on Linux. And basically, the paradigm is very different. If you're a programmer, what you want is, you know that you know your program, you know how it works. So you want to be able to define a policy for your own program. But mandatory access control is more about an administrator on the system being able to define a policy. So if you're writing a web browser, it's not what you want. On Windows, there are slightly more privilege dropping-like features, thanks to the control over token, and more recently, since Windows Vista, we have things like integrity levels. So there are some privilege dropping-like features, but there is still nothing to protect the kernel's attack surface. So the options are limited. And on Linux, for Google Chrome, we needed something like this, and we did some hacks, and we have a SetUID sandbox design that you can look at if you're interested in this. We've published slides at Black Hat Europe about this, and it's quite weird because nothing was really designed for this, so we kind of hacked our way through it. Also, ptrace-based sandboxes are quite popular. The idea is to use ptrace to be notified whenever an untrusted process will perform a system call. So this can be a good choice. Unfortunately, of course, it's slow, but otherwise for security it can be a good choice. But it's very hard to get right because ptrace was not designed for this at all. Also, on Linux there's one feature which could have been interesting for this, called seccomp. Seccomp is a special mode you can switch your process into that will only allow the process to reach 4 system calls. It will allow the process to reach read, write, and just exit, plus sig return to be able to handle signals. So it's just those 4 system calls. So of course, the kernel's attack surface is incredibly reduced through this. But the problem is, for instance, for Chrome, we were very limited. 4 system calls are not going to be enough. We need to be able to allocate memory, for instance. And one Googler, Marcus Gutschke, is working on a seccomp-based sandbox, and he's using crazy tricks such as sharing address space between different processes, sharing file descriptors, and then other processes which are not under seccomp are able to proxy the needed system calls. It sort of works, but it's not deployed into Chrome yet. But you can already look at it. So another popular alternative is basically people say, okay, we can't protect the kernel from malicious code, so what can we do? Well, let's reduce the kernel's privileges by using virtualization. So lots of people do this. Of course, virtualization has its problem and also expose quite a lot of attack surface nowadays, especially in some popular products. So, well, it's a good idea, but of course it has its drawbacks. Something else to protect the kernel is uderive. And as we've mentioned, unexpected two-user long pointer references are an issue. And I've mentioned before that on Linux, they used to not be exploitable because of thanks to segmentation. And so the idea behind uderive is very simple. It's just to make the kernel segment, the kernel's data segment descriptor expand down and put its limit above user-learned code. The problem is, what can you do on 64-bit systems, since for most of it, segmentation is not there anymore. So you can always do full address space switching or other small tricks, but it's going to have some performance penalty. So mmap min_array was a pragmatic attempt by the Linux developers to tackle this problem in a portable manner. The idea is just to have a system-wide minimum address that can be used in a process. Usually it's set to 64K, so user-learned processes cannot map behind 64K. But there is an exception, of course, for processes with the capsys row IO capability. So lots of root processes, for instance. This has been plagued with many bugs in the past. It's in much better shape now, but we found one bypass that we'll present now, and we found another one that we need to investigate. So we use personalities. The System 5 Release 4 operating system maps page 0 as read-only. And so, unfortunately, some programs depend on the behavior. And to make porting programs easier from System 5 Release 4 to Linux, Linux supports a System 5 Release 4 personality. So this personality is per process, and it's kept on execv, of course. So the funny thing is, we could get this personality and just choose to execute a statuid binary. And then, since this is a statuid binary, it automatically gets the capsys for IO capability, since it executes as root. And thanks to this capability, the mmap min_array check is bypassed, and a page is mapped as 0 in the address space. But of course, there's not much we can do. It's a root process we don't control, which has a page mapped at 0. So yeah, you could imagine that if this root process, process has a vulnerability like a null pointer reference, maybe you could exploit it. But we were trying to actually regain control of this process, and so we started to look for a binary that would drop privileges and let us regain control without going through execv. And we actually found one. Pulse Audio allowed us to do this. And it was not a bug in Pulse Audio, it was just a bug in the Linux kernel that we exploited through Pulse Audio. But then, of course, then we discovered Pulse Audio, and we took a look at it, and of course we also found a vulnerability, a completely different vulnerability in Pulse Audio that was unrelated. So yeah, other kernel protections. Well, there are a few kernel protections from PAX, but we don't have much time now if we want to take questions, so I will go through this quickly. So there are lots of bugs to find in kernels. We found 20 of them in a year, and we were still doing a lot of other work. So there are lots of bugs to find. The attack surface is growing in general. And the really interesting thing that's not necessarily expected is it's actually easier to reach this attack surface from remote. If you've attended our talk on virtualization at PACSEC, we've also said a similar thing for virtualization, because basically what happens is, for performance reasons, people want to design systems so that everything goes through as fast as possible to the hardware. And there is actually more and more low-level attack surface exposed remotely, which might be unexpected. And so the exploitation of those flows goes from very easy to very challenging. It can be really trivial and really hard. It's really hard to also get rid of the kernel's attack surface. Even in systems designed with security in mind, it remains. So yeah, we're hoping that Microsoft will have some kernel's attack surface reduction facilities soon in Windows. We'll see how it goes. Also, you can really say that user-learned exploitation prevention is kind of mature, but in terms of kernel exploitation prevention, it's really at its beginning. And all the current sandboxing techniques you see in Google Chrome, now in Microsoft Office, soon in other products, really make the kernel an ideal target. So thank you for attending, and if you have any question, we can take them. We still have 6 minutes. No questions? Thank you. Bye.